Answers the multiple choice questions in domain name system from the book Data Communications and Networking by Behrouz A. Forouzan. 1. A full domain name is a sequence of labels separated by blank. A. Semicolons. B. Dots. C. Colons. D. None of these. Answer, B. Dots. 2. A blank server loads all information from the primary server. A. Primary. B. Secondary. C. Zone. D. None of these. Answer, B. Secondary. 3. The first level in the generic domain section allows blank possible labels. A. 10. B. 12. C. 16. D. None of these. Answer, D. None of these. 4. If a label is not terminated by a null string, it is called a blank. A. PQDN. B. FQDN. C. SQDN. D. None of these. Answer, A. PQDN. 5. What a server is responsible for or has authority over is called a blank. A. Domain. B. Label. C. Zone. D. None of these. Answer, C. Zone. 6. DNS can use the services of blank using the well-known port 53. A. UDP. B. TCP. C. Either, A, or, B. D. None of these. Answer, C. Either, A, or, B. 7. In the domain name chal.atc.fhda.edu, blank is the most specific label. A. Chal. B. ATC. C. fhda. D. None of these. Answer, A. Chal. 8. The root of the DNS tree is blank. A. A string of characters. B. A string of 63 characters. C. An empty string. D. None of these. Answer, C. An empty string. 9. When the secondary downloads information from the primary, it is called blank transfer. A. Domain. B. Zone. C. Label. D. None of these. Answer, B. Zone. 10. A blank is a server whose zone consists of the whole tree. A. Domain server. B. Zone server. C. Root server. D. None of these. Answer, C. Root server. 11. A pointer query involves the blank domain. A. Inverse. B. Reverse. C. Root. D. None of these. Answer, A. Inverse. 12. Each node in the tree has a blank, which is a string with a maximum of blank characters. A. Label, 127. B. Name, 255. C. Label, 63. D. None of these. Answer, C. Label, 63. 13. To have a hierarchical namespace, a blank was designed. A. Domain space. B. Domain name. C. Domain namespace. D. None of these. Answer, C. Domain namespace. 14. The blank domains define registered hosts according to their generic behavior. A. Generic. B. Country. C. Inverse. D. None of these. Answer, A. Generic. 15. In a blank namespace, each name is made of several parts. A. Flat. B. Hierarchical. C. Organized. D. None of these. Answer, B. Hierarchical. 16. In a blank namespace, a name is assigned to an address. A name in this space is a sequence of characters without structure. A. Flat. B. Hierarchical. C. Organized. D. Connection-oriented. Answer, A. Flat. 17. The blank domain is used to map an address to a name. A. Generic. B. Country. C. Inverse. D. None of these. Answer, C. Inverse. 18. The blank domain section uses two-character country abbreviations. A. Generic. B. Country. C. Inverse. D. Bandwidth. Answer, B. Country. 19. A blank is a subtree of the domain namespace. A. Label. B. Name. C. Domain. D. None of these. Answer, C. Domain. 20. In the DNS, the names are defined in blank structure. A. A linear list. B. An inverted tree. C. A graph. D. None of these. Answer, B. An inverted tree. 21. If a label is terminated by a null string, it is called a blank. A. PQDN. B. FQDN. C. SQDN. D. None of these. Answer, B. FQDN. 22. In the Internet, the domain namespace, tree, is divided into blank different sections. A. 3. B. 2. C. 4. D. None of these. Answer, A. 3. 23. In blank resolution, the server returns the IP address of the server that it thinks can resolve the query. A. Iterative. B. Recursive. C. Straight. D. None of these. Answer, A. Iterative. 24. In the domain name chal.atc.fhda.edu, blank is the least specific label. A. Chal. B. ATC. C. EDU. D. None of these. Answer, C. EDU. 25. A host with the domain name pit.arc.nasa.gov is on the blank level of the DNS hierarchical tree. The root is level 1. A. 3rd. B. 4th. C. 5th. D. None of these. Answer, C. 5th. 26. In blank resolution, the resolver expects the server to supply the final answer. A. Iterative. B. Recursive. C. Straight. D. None of these. Answer, B. Recursive. 27. A blank server loads all information from the disk file. A. Primary. B. Secondary. C. Zone. D. None of these. Answer, A. Primary.